programming practitioner and clinical hypnotherapist. I am here to start the program. Ready, jet, set, go! And here we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in travels. So one of the considerations while traveling is, of course, like, what are you going to eat when you are traveling? And that's part of a whole planning situation as well. So me, myself, when I go to Puerto Rico together with my husband, I usually am, looking to other restaurants other than Puerto Rican food because otherwise I'm going to be sick of them. But anyway, just the same, like, if my husband is going with me to the Philippines, then I have to look for different international cuisine because, like, luckily there are a lot of restaurants because there are many expatriates in the Philippines from different countries. And so, yeah, it's quite easy for me to look for those kind of restaurants. So, but, it's not everybody who has that luxury as far as eating is concerned. There are some people who has eating disorders. And so, like, we want to be addressed and taken care of. That's the reason why we have invited our guest today. So Dr. Angela Derrick is a licensed clinical psychologist, the co-owner of SpringSource Psychological Center, and a contributing service member at the Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. She specializes in the treatment of mood, anxiety, eating disorder, and relationship concerns, and is a certified eating disorder specialist and supervisor through the International Association of Eating Disorder Professionals. So hello, doctor. How are you?
Hi, Lori. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, like this topic. This is about food.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, what is an eating disorder actually? Like, a lot of people probably has been wondering, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it is important to know that an eating disorder is not a fad. It's not a trend. It's not, something that comes and goes. It's not something that's created with fashion magazines, for instance, right? It's not just about young, well-to-do, white women, right? That what we really want to understand and appreciate is that anybody can develop an eating disorder. Anybody, regardless of gender, race, shape, size, age, right? That everyone can be affected. An eating disorder is a condition in which someone develops an unhealthy relationship with food and their bodies. So it can often take the form of restricting food intake. It can take the form of overeating large quantities of food in a short amount of time, and or kind of engaging in some sort of compensatory behavior to compensate for that intake, so via vomiting or excessive exercise. But what underlies a lot of these conditions is an unhappiness with kind of one's physical self, shape, and weight. There's oftentimes a distortion about being able to view oneself correctly. And there's a evaluation of self as being an over-evaluation of body to indicate how someone feels about themselves, right? So there's so many different ways we can feel good about ourselves, but for those afflicted with an eating disorder, kind of their perception of their body shape and size is kind of magnified or larger than we might expect.
Interesting. And so it seems like serious when I think about it, but what can be the causes of these eating disorders?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. It's a tough question, but what I always go back to is one of the leading researchers in our field, Dr. Cindy Bulick, has been noted to say genetics loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger, right? So both of these are important for understanding how an eating disorder comes to fruition. So oftentimes there is a genetic component. Many folks that I see in my office do have a family history, right? So that could be genes and or environment. But the environment are things like, was the person raised in an invalidating environment, right? Were they raised in an environment in which they felt they had very little agency or control, right? That can be one of the kind of risk factors. Other risk factors are things like, did your body develop early? Like especially for those born female, right, and developing kind of female secondary sex characteristics early, like before their peers, can be quite, shameful, unfortunately, and that can be a risk factor. So can bullying at an early age, right? Again, you'll hear this theme today as I talk about eating disorders. Shame, often shame about body, self, that there's something wrong with you, there's something bad, right? These messages get internalized at an early age. I heard someone say once that a lot of eating disorders, you can't get there unless there's some kind of dieting, right? So at some point, the individual, for whatever reason, and it doesn't have to be about the food. Eating disorders oftentimes have nothing to do with food, really. But that the individual starts manipulating their food intake somehow, perhaps to regulate something internally or to self-soothe, for instance. And that beginning to engage with diet and diet culture and trying to change one's body, that can be a very slippery slope, right? Again, I would never say that someone who was dieting was at fault if they developed an eating disorder. It's all these things in combination that can kind of set someone on that path.
Okay. And so, we're in a travel period right now because it's summer. So what are the travel preparations that you recommend for those with such eating disorders?
I've never really heard that question posed that way before, Lori, and so I really appreciate that you would understand how important that is, right? So my patients will come to me and say, so I've got this family trip coming up and I'm in the middle of my eating disorder recovery and this is going to be challenging. What should I do? Should I not go? Right? Should I wait another year or two until I'm further in my recovery? And that's always an option, right? If someone is very early on in their recovery and they feel like this is just too much of a challenge this year, then I really do encourage families to understand that. It's not that their loved one is abandoning them or avoiding them or doesn't love them. It's just it may be too much to ask, right? If we really understand an eating disorder as a significant mental health disorder, it can be a crisis, right? And you wouldn't ask somebody going through, let's say, chemotherapy, well, what's the matter with you if you're not going to, Paris with me this summer? It's like, okay, I got to stay here and get well, right? That's the priority. So in some cases, traveling may have to wait, right? But I think what you and I want to talk about are like, okay, so let's say, you've talked with your therapist and dietitian and your treatment team, and they're like, okay, this is going to be hard, but we want to encourage you to live your life and find pleasure and meaning and joy in your life. So let's figure out a way to help you go, right? So those are the conversations I really enjoy having with folks because it's things like, okay, who can be your support system? Is it your mom, right? Is it your sister? Somebody else on that trip has to know how you're doing, the things that might be challenging, and to be able to be that go-to person, right? Just so you're not so alone. You don't want to be on this trip trying to manage all of your, fears and worries and challenges all by yourself, right? So find somebody else that's going to be of assistance. Better if they're there in person, but okay if they're your support system from home and they're willing to kind of text and be that for you on the road. I think a dietitian plays a big part in this. I think the dietitian will sit down and say, okay, what are your meals likely to look like? Looks like you're going to have fast food on the way to that destination. So, what could a fast food meal look like? And really normalize it and prepare for it. I mean, ideally, we'd like our clients to get to the point where they're so flexible with food that these things aren't considerations, right? That they could show up at a fast food restaurant, pick something off the menu, and continue about their day. But that's not where everybody is yet, right? For some, that might be really overwhelming and really flooding and therefore very unsafe, right? So talking about it in advance, even making choices in advance, helps take some of the anxiety of it away.
Yeah. I think it's all about planning. Find out what are the restaurants that are available in the location that you're going to, so that you can identify. Oh, okay, this is the one which has the menu that I have. And so the good thing about that, I have no idea if you recommend vegetables for a lot of people who have the eating disorder. But I guess they can find out what is I'm sure every restaurant has a salad menu somehow.
Well, every restaurant is a little different, and folks with eating disorders vary so much in what their challenge food is, right? So, I mean, for some, a salad would be a safe choice. For others, it might be a different kind of food.
Okay.
So I would say, you know, helping the clients prepare for the right kind of challenge is important. Not flooding them with too many choices or, you know, things that are not going to be possible for them. But I also want to prepare clients, and this is part of the work I do, with, okay, we could maybe plan 80%, but there's going to be at least 20% that is going to be variable, right? That there's going to be a challenge of being flexible in situations that you couldn't prepare for. We obviously, and this is true about all of us in life, we can't prepare for everything, right? Something's going to happen, right? Yeah. We get a flat tire. Okay, now we can't eat for 4 hours. What do you do then, right? That you have to kind of, in that case, I might tell my clients to pack food, you know, and take it with them. But if something like that happens, you know, what does that mean about then when you do get, you know, on the road again, and when you do stop for food, and how do you handle being overly hungry in a place that has choices you might not necessarily, you know, normally select? So I always tell people this, it's not going to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Perfect is the enemy of good, right? So we just want it to be good enough, right? We want you to come home from vacation not having backslid in your recovery. You know, you don't have to make a huge amount of progress while you're gone, but we just want to hold you in this kind of safe, contained space as much as we can while allowing you to live your life and go have these experiences that are so fun.
Yeah, I like that, you know, have fun and then like, you know, have a plan B just in case. And so for those with scheduled trips already, do you have any suggestions on how to navigate traveling with someone with an eating disorder?
So when you are kind of the caretaker or your friend or family member has an eating disorder, I would say, you know, ask them what they need from you. Don't assume. You know, what they need from you might be very different based on their level of recovery. You know, I think 9 times out of 10, that individual would say, like, I just need you to know and care, you know, and not judge, certainly not be the food police, not ask me a lot of questions about food, right? It's not the caregiver's place, it's not their role to be the therapist, right? That person likely already has a therapist, and if they don't need that from their loved one, right? So I think it is hard for caregivers. They want to be involved, they want to solve, they want to fix, they might want to say, just, well, why can't you just, you know, eat or whatever it is, but I think I would ask caregivers to really manage their own anxiety around it, kind of respect the boundaries that the other person has in place, and not make the eating disorder the sole focus of the trip. Make the trip about connecting with that individual, just like you would, you know, with anybody. So,
I like that idea that, you know, don't be assuming that you're going to be the professional over here. So like, you know, you don't want to jeopardize your relationship, right? Because
That's
like
right.
otherwise you'll be ending fighting.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, the trip itself is already like, you know, a hit or miss. You're not going to be able to find out like, you know, what are the exact events that's going to happen for you day to day. Like, you know, you have planned trips, but sometimes, you know, things fall off from according to what you have planned. So like, you know, don't be stressed out so much.
Right. Don't take on the responsibility of trying to save somebody, right? Just be a friend.
Those are good advice, doctor. I really appreciate it. And like, you know, I hope that we have much more time. But anyway, like, you know, that's our topic for today, and I hope that, you know, for those people who are you know, in this kind of situation that they have eating disorder, like, you know, don't take that chance of, you know, getting to travel while you can, because like, you know, apparently like you know, life is short, so just continue like, you know, having fun, and like don't be discouraged, just be prepared to like, you know, whatever is gonna happen. But thank you again so much, doctor. And then like you know, if you are one of those professionals in the travel industry, or like, you know, you are one of those who have traveled so much and you have some expertise to share with us, just, you know, give me a holler. In this show, you can be your own, you know, Rick Steves or Peter Greenberg or Samantha Brown. You just want to have fun and have some conversations of how you navigate through traveling, not only local, but international. All right, you take care, and I see you soon.